Hi everyone, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of January 20th, 2020. First, to quickly recap the predictions for the previous week, I think my predictions for the stock market direction were actually off, and there may have been 1 or 2 days where there was either a correct prediction or partially correct prediction. However, mostly I think the market was going up when I thought it was going to be a down week. Among other predictions, as I said before many times, I think we have this ongoing Saturn-Pluto conjunction in Capricorn that often coincides with increased geopolitical tensions, major earthquakes, disasters, leaders that have been in power for a long time, either stepping down or passing away, etc., being removed. And of course, we're continuing to experiencing these kind of events. So we did have ongoing large earthquakes, although not as bad as sort of the week before, where the conjunction was even more precise. And we, of course, have continuing news about leaders passing away, as I think I caught that in my previous week's predictions. But basically, number one in badminton, Kena Momota was injured, and the driver of that car that this person was being driven in was killed in the Malaysia car crash on the 13th. And also on the 19th of January, Prince Harry had delivered his first public remarks on the decision to step down from the royal duties. So it's like I said, it doesn't have to be somebody dying or being forcefully removed. It could be just leaders stepping away. At the same time, it is interesting. The Queen of England is obviously alive and well, as far as I know. At the same time, I did predict in my annual predictions that perhaps we may hear about some sort of change of power, specifically in the UK, in the royal family. And so, while it was not anything kind of more tragic than that, but it is interesting that I saw in the Queen's chart there was an indication that there will be some sort of an announcement related to basically being in power, and it's going to be a public event in her chart. So let's see. And I also predicted fairly intense transits, or rather intense week for China due to some intense transits to its chart. These are ongoing and have been some of them have been in place for a while and will continue into upcoming weeks, but particularly last week was, had some highlights regarding that influence. And indeed, we have both some, large earthquakes. So the 5.9 hit there in near a city called Azark, I think. And there was also some news, and I think that may be happening frequently, but that's just something that I personally saw in the news that I haven't necessarily seen before, about some sinkhole where there was a bus that fell in and 6 people got killed. And I also made specifically prediction for the 17th of January that there may be an announcement out of China about new goals, projects, agreements, or vision, for the country, and that they would be related to IT, AI, high tech, electronics, etc. And on the 15th of January, there was an announcement from the Guangzhou city government that they have a plan to launch a zone dedicated to artificial intelligence in order to, improve and build a more robust digital economy. And the big, news from China that have been sort of trickling in, but this last week and into the week of 2020, of January 20, we have sort of intensifying news about the spread of this new coronavirus that is apparently mutated SARS virus. And as of the Monday, actually as of Tuesday, since I'm recording this day later because of the holidays in the US, that market was closed on January 20th. So we have 9 people dead that the news is reporting, and also that the virus has now spread to Thailand, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the United States. And previously it has been, speculated whether or not it can be basically spread from human to human, and now it turns out that it can, and obviously that potentially can lead to millions of being infected with, something quite serious. And let's see. And as I made this prediction in previous, many times, but basically to just kind of reiterate that under Pluto-Saturn conjunction, regardless of the sign event, there is an increased probability of also major, epidemics that have widespread reach and affect many people. And indeed, Pluto has to do with death, and of course Saturn also the end of a cycle, end of something, basically decay, difficult conditions, etc. And we had the discovery of the HIV virus and also AIDS epidemic back in the early 80s, right, when Pluto and Saturn were conjunct before. So based on that, and based on intense kind of aspects to specifically China's chart that involve 12th house of things that are hidden, things that have to do with healthcare, but also like pollution, and again things to do that maybe have to do with medical facilities, prisons, things that are done in sort of secret places. So who knows if this virus is some sort of a bioweapon that was just being worked on in some sort of secret. Again, I'm obviously totally speculating here, or it escaped from some facility, or was just literally just news about it and being hidden, because obviously it's not a positive sort of a type of news, so we may not necessarily have all the details on what exactly is happening. And this is something that will be affecting that area in China's horoscope for like months to come, so definitely, and into this whole year and into next year even. So definitely this will be potentially this development with this new coronavirus may continue on for months until things are straightened out. So let's see, so moving into news or other predictions for this week, if I can find them. The general ongoing predictions, we will continue experiencing this background influence of the Pluto-Saturn conjunction in Capricorn, so especially on the 22nd and 23rd of January, so increased probability of earthquakes, news about powerful leaders, somebody may be stepping down, or they're just status completed changes, so somebody who was powerful may no longer be powerful, or they just change their role completely, and again for better or worse. And there will be increased news about things like old buildings needing to be repaired, and if infrastructure projects are not kind of initiated deliberately with control and discipline, then there is a greater probability at this time that older buildings or like especially tunnels, bridges, etc. may collapse. We also have ongoing transits to kind of chart into the US, as well as general global transits that indicate for US increased tensions in international negotiations and partnerships, especially affecting negatively communication and transportation businesses, also businesses related to IT, high tech, any sort of gadgets such as cars, media, airplanes, computers, telephones. And there may be some news about potentially financial losses there, or earnings less than expected, or maybe some strikes, employees striking, bad weather, and even earthquakes potentially affecting these businesses in terms of causing financial losses or delays. And or there may be some restrictions or some communication issues or problems reaching agreements, and or problems with, say, supplies or parts, or an ability to produce something because again the parts are missing, equipment is not functioning properly, etc. And these tensions kind of in the US, or may begin in the US, but then perhaps spread outward in subsequent weeks. And also at the same time, especially on the 25th through 28th of January, there may be problems and or just some news, potentially stressful news related to oil, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, of course, healthcare, which I'm guessing it might be related to China, and coronavirus there, but it could also relate to problems with specifically oil, and it may be, a consequence of, like I said, those tense negotiations that are, potentially may occur in the US with its partners, and or it could be just an independent event where there's, say, an attack on oil refinery, or fire somewhere, an explosion of the oil rig, or some sort of a problem with transportation of oil, and again, due to potentially even bad weather. It could be just an accident, or it could be an attack involving, again, either oil, gas, maybe gas leak, and then there's an explosion, or perhaps a Navy ship is attacked. Again, it could be just an accident, but it's something related to either being in the water or chemicals, and the situation may be sort of coming up abruptly, and it may involve fire and explosion or some sort of angry protest at the very minimum, and that of course may affect prices of oil and or related products such as various chemicals, gas, and or if it's related to pharmaceuticals, say this epidemic now is being kind of spreading wildly, whatever the vaccines, or I'm not sure, whatever is needed to basically, any sort of medications that may be needed to kind of either address it or alleviate the symptoms may also go up wildly in price. And so for oil specifically, we may at first experiencing the price going up, especially, like I said, maybe the 25th, 26th, maybe even the 27th, and then another wild swing perhaps down on the 28th, or even up through the 28th, and then oil price say down on the 29th. But this end of this week and into early next week, it's going to be an important time to look for news and oil prices fluctuations. And for US, and again for oil, moving into February, sort of a glance preview, we will have another important period of, again, increased news, and things at that time may even take a more aggressive tone, so more kind of news about potentially problems in communicating with partners, and so some agreements may or may not kind of go well, but at the very minimum, the tone of negotiations may become more aggressive and or involve military somehow, and or there may be kind of increased probability of accidents or explosions, attacks, protests, and those may occur in particular, like I said, February 1st through the 12th, and especially important dates are 3rd through the 5th, 7th, and 9th. And that too, excuse me, that too may involve news about oil, Navy, chemicals, poisons, just water, beverages, and or even religion, say places of worship, or attacks, maybe religious, religion motivated by some religious beliefs, and or it may even involve places where people come, to watch movies or concert halls or music, or it may involve equipment, that's used for video and audio. But something more likely, I'm guessing it will have to do with oil, such as an attack on a ship, either transportation, accident, some sort of maritime accident, or it could be, issue related to burning of oil and chemicals, or spreading of the infectious diseases, indeed. As far as the, the direction of the markets, and by markets I mean U.S. markets like Dow Jones and the Nasdaq indexes primarily. On Monday, the 20th, markets were closed due to the holidays. And for Tuesday, the 21st, my prediction was, which I already posted the day before on my blog at tolstunka.com, was that the market would be down, and indeed it has gone down. At the same time, I also made prediction for the 21st, 22nd, that there will be globally mildly negative news for IT, telecoms, companies related to like high tech, aerospace, innovation, anything to do with electronic and computers, etc. There may be some news about leaders' popularity going down, perhaps due to their eccentric behavior. Of course, Elon Musk comes to mind, but I haven't really heard anything specifically about him. Or again, I'm not following news that closely. So I only pick up on things that are really like big headlines. Or maybe poor leadership decisions by leaders from one of those companies. Or perhaps initiative made by, again, one of these companies that is too radical and so it is disliked. So it could really be related to finance, and for example, how, users' information is protected or how payments are handled, some cybersecurity, kind of specifically, cryptocurrencies, something related to kind of protecting financial information, financial data. And or there may be news about lower than expected earnings. And again, this might have to do with just some radical change being made or some new radical product that is just kind of too weird and is not necessarily being accepted by the consumers. So these kind of news may introduce some sort of unpredictability and create concerns for the investors, especially, are their investments secure? And so on the 21st, 22nd, stocks of such companies, again, IT, like telecoms, aerospace, etc., high tech, they may therefore go down. On Wednesday, I also expect market to go down. In the US, there may be increased focus on leadership, laws, judges, legal matters, international relations, various laws being passed, as well as long-distance transportation and shipments. So there may be some decision or some action at that time where some boundaries may be tested, or kind of the decision may be kind of further reaching than expected, or the scope may be greater than expected. So a law maybe is passed in a group in for example, related to some immigration or something status, but it then encompasses more groups than expected. Or say if somebody's sentence, maybe their sentence is a lot kind of greater than perhaps was expected, or involves larger group of people than expected. Or if there's some leader perhaps doing something that is considered illegal, they may be seen as that they've gone too far and they're doing something that is not legal or internationally acceptable. And again, maybe on a different date this would have not been seen as such, but specifically on 22nd, it may be seen kind of in a worse light than usual. So like leaders' morals may be judged, or literally leader may be given a sentence, or some famous judges or lawyers may be in the news, and again, for pushing boundaries, maybe they're pushing for like greater freedom for some group than before, something along the lines of like pushing the existing kind of boundaries, increasing the scope, kind of going further than before, and again, for better or worse, both for maybe fighting for some rights for somebody, or vice versa, doing something kind of illegal to the point where everybody's like surprised how did they, dare to kind of go that far. Or perhaps, a company leader or government leader, they kind of go further as far as like maybe expanding the scope of their company, not company, but scope of services they're offering internationally, or trying to increase more international locations than before, literally traveling further than expected. Maybe their trip was scheduled to take, placed in one city, and then they decided to extend it to like 3 more cities nearby, or further location than expected. So something along those lines. On the 23rd, the market has a, I think, slight chance of going up, and that up move may be stronger for US and internationally due to some positive news potentially coming out of the US, and those may be related to, again, someone's leadership, earnings, taxes, insurance. So for example, some domestic leaders likability is increases, or the news may be about the earnings going up, perhaps due to taxes, or there is some sort of large acquisition, especially by like a pharmaceutical or oil or potentially transportation communication business goes well or is completed. And so that may be, seen as positive news, and the market goes up. The news may be positive for the leaders and or companies, like I said, that have to do with like pharmaceuticals, oil, communication, transportation. At the same time, also for communication, transportation businesses, there may be some stressful news where if or they may not be necessarily stressful, that they just may be important. Perhaps if there was an ongoing negotiation and we're looking to make an acquisition or sign an agreement, that may be the day, the 23rd of January, where that agreement is finally signed. So if the agreement is signed, if something's actually accomplished, then the popularity of leaders that were overseeing this may go up. So sort of more positive for leaders in the role, of managing these agreements, but it could be stressful at the same time, stressful time for the companies, especially in communication, transportation arena. For China, the 23rd is also important, and there will be increased news about Navy, oil, chemicals, religion, pharmaceuticals, as well as infectious diseases. And that may have to do with increased regulations and attempts to improve controls over some issue, and that's probably because, again, it no longer can be hidden as of that time. And I did see news already today on the 21st that they're canceling, of course it's about the Chinese New Year coming up, and they're canceling these celebration activities in the province where this new virus had originated or being is spreads there or has been spreading. And so indeed the 23rd might be the day where even more kind of a larger scale controls may be announced, perhaps on the larger scale than even just the province. And that whole situation, like I said, because of where it's occurring in China's horoscope, chances are we're not even seeing all of the information about it. And as of like Wednesday or rather Thursday, it may be the case that information just will no longer be hidden. So perhaps we'll hear about more cases of people that have been affected, or some new facts that perhaps previously government was trying to not necessarily disclose for a variety of reasons. And on Thursday, more controls may need to be put in because that information can no longer be suppressed. Let's see. And then on the 24th of January, I think the market may go down again. And that's again just mainly because of especially towards the end of the day, that's because we will then, starting on the 25th or maybe as early as the 24th, we'll start experiencing sort of some tensions or some news coming up again about all these areas related to oil, chemicals, pharmaceuticals, etc. And so at the same time, investors may be in the mood where things will be so uncertain that uncertainty will prompt them to basically take their money and kind of stay put until that uncertainty had passed. And in addition to all these increased news about oil, and especially I think the 26th and 27th of January may be the key dates for that. There may be also news, of course, about bad weather that involves either excessively wet weather or flooding or some rains, and or there may be some news about contamination of water, perhaps some sort of something spills, maybe because of the flood, and or the disease obviously can spread more if there's this water that's standing and doesn't drain very easily. So again, we can hear about attacks on some oil refinery, fire explosion due to gas leaks, or simply anger and protest over increased oil prices. Either way, I definitely expect there to be a large swing in the markets. I could potentially see a large drop on the 27th and or 28th, so Monday and or Tuesday, and then it will most likely swing back up, and that would be, up could be as early as Tuesday the 28th and or the 29th Wednesday. So something definitely to look out for. And that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed this, and come back and check me out next week. Until then, catch you guys later. Bye.